Awkward. Hey, a purple glove. That's distracting.
That's my glove, sorry. I have another one.
That's fine. Seriously, junior high guys, somebody tell me where you learned about it. Brett. That's good. Wow. Did she show you videos? That'd have been awkward, wouldn't it? Mom. Alright. Danielle. Bailey. Good, because they're back there and they were going to test you to see. Oh my God. Yeah, this is going to be fun. Emily Lowe. I know how much you love talking in front of people. Go. Where? Home? Okay. Is that where you learn the good stuff or the bad stuff? I'm only asking. The good stuff? Where do we learn most? Where's most of the information at? Okay. Aaron Stamper apparently knows everything. That's awkward. Trent. Where'd you learn? Your what? Okay. Alright. I'll be honest with you, my first real connection with the whole topic was not from my dad. Okay? Actually, it kind of was. There were books in his garage that I read. And that turned things upside down for me, because then when I met a friend of mine that I initially went to church with, he told me some things, and I thought, well, that's very interesting. My mom and dad never really sat down with me. The truth of the matter is, the majority of you guys probably have not had one of the good sit-down mom and dad, hey, this is really what the real basics are. Okay? Because here's the thing, and I love this, okay? Because I'm so excited to talk about this because, one, in your day and age, this is the thing that's happening. Okay? More and more teenagers are becoming sexually active. More and more. Okay? And there are consequences to that. Okay? 25 million people over the next year are going to contract an STD. Okay? 15 million of those, listen, are going to be under the age of 25. Okay? I'm just going to, over the next few weeks, I'm going to shoot real with you. I am going to be absolutely honest with you, and I'm not going to pull any punches, because I don't think you deserve for me to sugarcoat this or to kind of back away from it, because I think if I don't tell you the truth, I'm afraid you're going to hear a lie. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay? And so there are not just the physical repercussions of the fact that there are possibilities out there. It's in the last 15 years doing youth ministry, I've seen student after student after student who's either gotten pregnant. Listen, I've had 4 or 5 conversations with students from Crandall ISD in the last year and a half who've gotten pregnant. Okay? Kaufman County has the highest rate of teen pregnancy and STDs in the state. Okay? We can't win a playoff game, but we are number 1 in the state in something. Okay? Okay? Can I get real with you? Okay? Because, listen, it takes a lot of effort to win a playoff game, but for some reason it doesn't take any effort at all to sacrifice standards. Does that make sense? Okay? And so what I'm going to tell you tonight is that God has a plan. Listen, God created sex. Okay? I'm not going to tell you sex is bad, because it's not. Okay? It's not. God created it, and God created it, why? To be enjoyable, because what God does, He creates to be enjoyable. Okay? Listen, so what does that mean? Genesis chapter 2. And we'll start with, thank you. She was clapping about the Bible, not about the S word. Genesis 2, verse 24. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. And that word joined means really connected. Very much knowing intimately to the core of who each other is. Okay? And they shall become one flesh. Meaning they are one flesh. Listen, if you pull skin off you, how many of you have got a really big scab like during football season or basketball season? Okay? How many of you have ever picked that and scraped it off? Okay? How stupid was that? That's your flesh, slick. Okay? You know the reason scabs hurt when they come off? They're part of your body. Okay? Listen, that's why divorce hurts, because you've become one flesh. Okay? And so when people are divorcing at higher than 50%, okay, and we're dealing with that, why? Because people don't believe in the permanence of marriage. People don't believe in what God's Word said is it's one flesh and it's supposed to be for a lifetime, not for in the meantime. Okay? Somebody write that down and put that on Facebook later, okay? Marriage is for a lifetime, not for the meantime, okay? Somebody write that down. That's good. I'm going to write that down, okay? It comes to me in a blink of an eye, and if I don't remember it, it's gone, okay? And so what He's done here, listen, is created something that's supposed to be permanent that He's supposed to be involved in, okay? Honestly, most of you don't pray about the food that you eat at the school. Most of you should begin praying about your food and your lunch long before you eat it so that God will protect you from it. I've eaten at your school, you need to pray God's provision and protection. Okay? But listen, most of you don't pray about most of the things in your life. And so why would it be different now that you start praying about your sex life? Because none of you, listen, I would venture to say most of you, probably 99% of you have never even prayed about the girlfriend or the boyfriend that you come, hey, will you go out with me? At what point have you asked God to be involved in your relationships? It was one of the first things Tammy and I started doing. I mean, she was praying for me long before she met me. Okay? Why don't you start praying for your husband now? Guys, instead of going, oh, she's hot, ask God to build in her character that's going to lift you up now. Okay? God created this. God needs to be involved in it. And if God's involved in it, look at what happens. Verse 25. And they were both naked, and the man and wife were not ashamed. Why? Somebody tell me why. Because they did it God's way. Why? Listen, let me ask this question. I'm going to be very blunt, so cover your ears if you think you're going to get offended. Okay? Good. Barker? Why is it that you have to sneak around as a 15 and 16-year-old to hide it? Anybody want to answer that question? Because you're not supposed to be doing it. Wait until Mom and Dad have gone to Walmart. We've got 30 minutes. Okay? It's not the first time I've heard that. You wait until, hey, parents, how many times do you know that goes on? Am I right? Okay? I'm not telling a lie. I'm just being blunt tonight. Okay? Just not Brianna, okay? Brianna Blunt, did y'all get that? High school? Yeah, that's great. So, listen. So if we start to understand and learn to do it God's way, there's nothing that we have to hide, nothing that we have to be ashamed of. Listen, you can go home and tell your mom and dad about it. Okay? Why not? If you're not ashamed, how do you get to that point? Do it God's way. A lot of this comes down to right time and right place. Okay? Because listen, everybody loves fire, right? I am so digging on fire. Because I love fire. Because fire, it's new. Hey, with all this hot air in here and all the oxygen that's leaving the building, this will never blow up. Okay? Listen.
Boys.
Great, I'm glad y'all can make fire. Put you on Survivor, now hush. Okay. Hey, talking has its time and place, and right now mine is. Okay? So here's what happens. Listen. Fire is good in a particular place and time. Listen, if you take this home and you put it on the kitchen table, and you get the roses going, and you get the spaghetti going, and you get the garlic bread, and you get the little sparkling apple stuff that you get at Walmart for $2.97, okay? And then you sit down and you get some Luther Vandross or something in it. Kenny G. Martin, do you remember Kenny G? No, apparently not. My bad. Something like Bach or Beethoven or something, Alright, some Kenny Chesney, okay? And then you're like, yeah, but see, this is protected. It's in the right place in the right time. If I tip this over, we all blow up. Okay? No, don't even. Okay? Now, on the other hand, I love this stuff. Okay? This is God's will in my life right now. Okay? Barbecue. Okay? There's nothing better than barbecue except for maybe grilled shrimp. Okay? Just saying. For my life, that's what it is. But listen, if I were to pour all this stuff in here and blow it up and all of a sudden... Okay? Why are y'all freaking out? Thank you. Not the right place, not the right time. Okay? Listen, I'm gonna say this real blunt. Real blunt when I say this. You're going to miss this. If y'all would start figuring out that when you're in a dating situation and things start to move a little too fast, or if y'all would start to freak out the same way y'all freaked out, oh my God, he's going to blow us up because he's going to light this on fire. Listen, if things started moving too fast and too furious for you, maybe if you just raised your hand and said, stop for a minute, maybe things wouldn't go too far and there wouldn't be anything later to be ashamed of. Right place, right time. Like gifts. I mean, seriously, this is the great thing. Is that when my wife and I got married, this is the great thing. We were God's gift to each other. Okay? And there's going to be a proper time and a proper place for us to exchange those gifts. Listen, at Christmas time, nobody walks into Walmart, gets a gift, and goes, hey, honey, this is yours. Like October 30th. That's dumb. Okay? That's what causes divorce right there. Okay? So what I'm saying is right place, right time. When is the right place and the right time? After God has joined you. If you haven't started praying about it, you can't say that God's involved in it and that, oh, God put us... No, He didn't. Because you never asked Him to get involved. Okay? So God has a plan for your life. Not just for the overall arching plan of your life that, oh, one day that, I'll be a scientist someday and I have 3 kids and I have a wife and we'll have 2 dogs and I'll have this Hummer that I can run over people with. Okay? God has a plan for every part of your life. Not just, man, I hope I get good grades in school. Because honestly, that's when we do the prayer list, honestly, the most things that y'all pray about are friends, school, grades, and sports. And unspoken. Okay? Why don't you start praying for your dating relationships? Why don't you start praying for your family? Well, most of y'all do pray for your family, but start praying specifically for your parents. Let God get involved in that. Say, God, I want you to do something. Wouldn't you think that the Creator of the universe knows more about how to deal with your relationships than you did? When was the last time that you created a relationship between man and woman? God started it. And so over these next 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to talk about what God's plan is and how we can walk into that plan. Okay? Because in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, God says something very specific. It says this, verse 12, all things are lawful for me, but all things are not helpful. Okay? He's saying, all things are lawful for me, but I will not be brought under the power of any. Food's for the stomach and stomach for the foods, but God will destroy both it and them. Now the body is not for sexual immorality. Anything that is against what God's plan is. You just underline that and say, sexual immorality is anything not done God's way. Okay? Verse 14. And God raised up the Lord and will also raise us up by His power. Do you not know that your bodies are members of Christ? Shall I then take the members of Christ and make them members of a harlot? Certainly not. So what he's saying here, listen, you guys and ladies, check this out. Anytime you've given your heart to that person and your body to that person, you've committed adultery if you have not got the ring and you've not trusted God for that opportunity. Does that make sense? And yes, it's sin. And yes, God forgives all of it. But there's a way out of all opportunity. Every temptation has a way out. God says so. That in every way He will give you a way of escape. Use it. Be a man. Have some self-control. Be a lady. Have some dignity. Some self-value. And don't fall under the pressure of some guy who's never been able to hold down a job for 30 minutes tell you that you're valuable when he himself has not proven himself valuable enough to you. One of the questions you guys need to start asking is this question here. Am I right for her? Ladies, ask this question. Is he even right for me? Am I right for him? Could your life draw him away from Christ? Because when we talk about what God has done, he's talking about, and here it's talking about idols. And as he moves forward, he talks about idols. Idols, guys, this is it. Is that idols are anything that draw attention to themselves that is not what Christ has called us to draw our attention to. And that's why I think that a lot of you guys, one, you don't pray about your relationships at all. I can watch that and I can see it. You don't pray about your relationships at all. And the reason I say that is because you end up hurt, broken, upset, frustrated, mad, bitter, hacked off, ready to do things, gossip things, Facebook things, okay? But listen, if we start to do things God's way, those kind of things kind of fall by the wayside. Why? Because you're doing it God's way, and God's the author of peace, not of confusion. Does that make sense? So start praying about this stuff. And then when God gives you a clear answer, do it. I mean, it took me Tammy knew long before I even asked her, but she knew we were set. It took me a long time to go, God, you sure? But when I did, it stuck. And we've been stuck together, and we're sticking together because we believe that there's no other way out than either I'm gone because God took me home, or she's gone because God took her home, or we're done because God took us both home. It's the only way out. Because we see over 50% of marriages end in divorce. You guys don't see anything permanent anymore. We don't see the couples like the Watsons. How long have your parents been married? 50 flipping years, y'all. That's half a century. That's like 4 junior high girls. Okay? No, well, 3 or 4. Good Lord, that's a lot of people. That's a lot of years, y'all, because that's commitment. And we have a commitment until, well, it just doesn't fit me anymore. I don't love you anymore. I choose not to. What? So this is what God's saying, is anytime it's outside of that context, it's idol worship, because you're looking at her like she's the thing that has made your life. You see what I'm saying? Is it when it draws your attention away? And I've seen guys who get involved with girls, and all of a sudden, the next 16 weeks, they don't come to church. When they're at church, they're like snuggle bugs, and I'm like, can I just like peel you off like duct tape? Just separate for like 15 minutes so that you can hear what God has to say? Because when you're stuck on somebody, and everybody else's attention is on you too, because, I mean, I've heard stuff that has gone on Wednesday nights that I haven't seen, and I'm like, seriously? That's messed up. I mean, if you're here for here, great. If you're here for them, man, go sit in front of the TV when your parents are there. Now, I don't want to watch it, and neither does anybody else. And so as we move forward, hear this. Joseph, in Genesis chapter 39, does something really interesting. Listen, Exodus hadn't even been written yet, and neither Leviticus, where it says, do not commit adultery. Okay? In Genesis 39, this is what happens. He's absolutely amazing. I mean, Joseph is like stud boy, okay? I mean, he's like, if you ever want to marry a guy, ladies, this is going to be it. This is what happens. In verse 7, I wouldn't marry Joseph because he's long gone, but marry someone like him. It came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast longing eyes on Joseph and said, lie with me. Okay? Which means, know me. But he refused and said to his master's wife, look, my master does not know what is with me in the house. So he doesn't know anything. And he's committed all that he has to me in my hand. There's no one greater in this house than I. Nor has he kept anything back from me but you. Because you are what? His wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and what? Sin against God. Joseph, listen, he had been in captivity, he had been sold into slavery, and now he was a servant in a foreign land. And if anybody ever had an excuse, my life really stinks, I just have this excuse, I'm just asleep with whatever I want. Joseph goes, no, I'm not sinning against you, I'm sinning against God. And then his dad, this is a great thing, Jacob, his dad, okay? Jacob went to a well one day, that's why they call it Jacob's well. They went to Jacob's well, and he went to this lady, and he saw this lady, and her name was Rachel. And Rachel cast this spell on him. He was like, oh yeah, boy. Okay? And so he's like, I love her. I want to be with her. And then he went to her dad and said, which, by the way, I'm just going to say this and drop it like it's hot. Guys, you need to start asking dads before you walk into her life.
Amen.
Amen. Say it again. That's a poem. Guys, be the man and don't hide. Walk up to the man and say, hey, am I worthy of dating your daughter? Because if you're not, maybe you shouldn't. Okay? And so this is what he does. He goes up to his dad, her dad, and says, I want to marry her. And so he says, well, what's the price for it? Because there's a dowry. And so the dad said, oh, dude, you got to work for me 7 years. He's like, she's worth it. She's worth it. So he worked 7 years, y'all. 7 years. And so on the wedding day, you can look it up in Genesis chapter 29. This is great. On the wedding day, the dad brings out the bride, beautifully adorned. There's people everywhere. Guys, yeah, it's good. It's wedding day. 7 years, and it's a year of Jubilee, y'all. He lifts up that veil, and it's her older sister. Jacked up. 7 years? Seriously? It took me 8 years to get out of college, and it was worth it. But 7 years, he worked 7 years. Some of y'all have a hard time driving 7 minutes. Okay? So he's saying, where is my wife? And he says, you can have your wife, but complete the 7 days with your first wife, and then I will give you my other daughter, the one that you worked for. And then he worked another 7 years for her. 14 years he worked for her. Listen, ladies, you need to be worth working for. Okay? Guys, if she's not worth it, don't try it. Because listen, ladies, I'm going to tell you straight up, and moms and dads, I hope you're writing this down, because you children, ladies, are children of the King. You know what that means? You're princesses. Okay? You're a child of the King. You're a princess, and you're a prince. So there needs to be some chivalry within you guys. If you're going to do it God's way, there's got to be some kind of act of chivalry that you're acting like a biblical man. And ladies, that you act like the princess of God. And you don't allow yourself to be treated any other way than royalty in God's kingdom. Not a servant, not a serf, not a wench, not anything like that, but as a child of the King. So God has a plan. Jeremiah 29:11 says this, I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper you, to give you hope and to give you a future. What does that mean? This is the bottom line. Matthew 5:48, be holy as I am holy. Matthew chapter 5, verse 8 says, blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. So God's saying it's not just the physical act of sleeping together, which is a misnomer because there's no sleeping that goes on. Okay? Just going to put that out there like that. Okay? So what happens? Is it's our thought process, the way that we don't do things God's way, in the relationship kind of way. It's in getting outside of what His steps are. And we start walking in our own quicksand. You see what's happening in our culture today? Listen, I'll show you what happens in our culture in Romans chapter 1. And this is just super stuff. And while I'm finding this, I want to let you see this video of of a daughter and a dad and their conversation. By the way, this is from a movie that came out. What? Killing me small.
Well, sister, I like.
Alice. Yeah, she's great. Hey, Tim, I was wondering, why don't you get remarried after Mom?
I don't know. Guess I still haven't met the right gal. Why?
I thought you just maybe gave up on the whole institution of it. Of marriage. But do you think there's any value in it?
Yeah. Yeah, marriage has value. When you're older, much older, like your mother, it seemed to work out fine for her the second time around. Later in life,
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, you definitely don't want to have to get married because you weren't careful.
What?
But you know what I'm talking about. There's things that you need to think about if you're going to be physically intimate.
Okay, don't over the top.
It's just as embarrassing for me as it is for you.
I doubt that. And don't bother, because Mom beat you to it like 10 years ago.
Well, you didn't have a boyfriend 10 years ago.
I'm sure things work the same way.
Alright, so you guys are taking precautions.
Okay, Dad, please just don't worry about that. Edward is old school.
Old school, great. What's that, like code or something?
Oh my God, Dad, I'm a virgin.
Okay, good. Glad we covered that.
Me too.
Virgin. Like Edward a little bit more, huh?
I wish we had time to show the other clip, but bless our hearts, we have to look at the Bible. Romans chapter 1. This is where we're at in our society. Romans chapter 1, verse 21. It says this, because although they knew God, they did not glorify Him as God, nor were thankful, but futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Okay? So they began walking away, even though they knew God. They knew God had a plan for their life. They knew that God was trustworthy, but they walked away from it. Verse 22, professing to be wise, they became fools. A lot like going, Mom, Dad, I know what I'm doing. Okay? And changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. Therefore, God also gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts to dishonor their bodies among themselves. Verse 25, who exchanged the truth of God for a lie and worshiped and serve the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. So what does that mean? Is that a lot of times with physical activity outside of marriage, bottom line is this, is that you end up worshiping yourself rather than you worship the other person. Because the question often gets asked, what am I getting out of this affection? I am giving her affection and she's not giving it back to me. This relationship's not working out. That has nothing to do with love. It has everything to do with lust and hormones. Because true love gives affection freely without the concept of saying, I better get that back. And so what God is saying through His Word is that people start walking away from God and they start exchanging the truth for lies, saying, hey, I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want, with no consequences. Bottom line is, guys, you don't. Because there's always going to be physical consequences. There's always going to be social. And cradle, there's always going to be social consequences. Okay? There's going to be emotional consequences. There's going to be mental consequences. What happened last night? Did anything happen more than it was supposed to happen? Am I by myself, all by myself right now? That kind of concept, that mental consequence. And so what moves on is that things got worse in verse 26. For this reason, God gave them up to vile passions, for even their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. Against nature, meaning God had set a plan in motion, and they were saying, I don't care. I'm going to move forward with my plan. Verse 27. Likewise, also the men leaving the natural use of the woman burned in their lust for one another, men with men committing what is shameful and receiving in themselves penalty of their error, which was due. Listen, if you just want to bottom line it out into like sociology and psychology and even in just basic statistics, homosexuals have a higher rate of depression, suicide, and STDs than any other part of our society. Why? Because it wasn't meant to be that way. Verse 28, even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind to do those things which are not fitting. Verse 29, being filled with all unrighteousness, sexual immorality, wickedness, covetousness, maliciousness, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, evil-mindedness, backbiters, haters of God, violent, proud, boasters, inventors of evil things. I've always loved reading that thing. It's like almost people stand in a room going, man, what can I invent today that's evil? Disobedient to parents, listening to cell phones in youth group, undiscerning, untrustworthy, unloving, unforgiving, unmerciful. It's in there. You should read my Bible. Who listen, verse 32, who know the righteous judgment of God, that those who practice such things are deserving of death, not only to do the same, but also when we approve of those who practice them. It's like we sit in our little huddle at school and go, oh, you had sex this weekend? Good job. Finally. And we don't look at it and go, bless your heart. I bet when you break up, your heart's going to be really broken because you joined as one flesh. And you didn't trust God for that. I'm going to walk you through this because I know that at some point this is going to hurt. You see what I'm saying? Is this society? Listen, because it's cultural and because MTV says so and because they, like that chick on Sex and the City says it's alright and that lady with that big freaking mole says it's alright, okay? Because The View says, because Orca Winfrey, excuse me, says it's fine, okay? Hey, she denied Christ on TV. She gets what she's coming to her. Listen, just because it's cultural, just because it's on CMT, or because it's on that music channel, because it's on the bear or the fox or the wolf or whatever, we think it's right. Listen, it's only right if it's coming out of here and it declares it right. Does that make sense? Because anything outside of that, listen, when it says that a man shall leave his mother and father, it means leaving the protection and the sustaining and the providence of the parental relationship. So hear me, when you are 13, 14, 16, 18, 19, 20, 38 years old, you're still under your parents' provision and love and care and guidance. When you walk outside of that and you become intimately, physically involved with somebody, you are walking outside of what God's plan is for your life. And part of that is protection. How can a shepherd protect his sheep when the sheep go astray? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so, thank you. Were you like vocally through her? You were just like, thank you. It's like that casting the voice. It was kind of cool. Now, I should get some amens tonight, I'm telling you. Or at least get some stuff on Facebook later. But guys, here's the thing. What I'm asking is that we start to learn what it means to do things right time, right place. Right time, right place. Because ultimately, it boils down to being this. You are God's gift to somebody else. What are you doing with your gift now? Are you protecting and respecting the gift? Or are you like, geez, here's a Walmart card. Hope you like it. Who does that? Shows no thought and no value for the other person. Statistics will tell us this, is that the majority of teenagers who are sexually involved outside of marriage end in divorce. Why? Because they haven't learned to be faithful to their spouse, and so it's a continuing habit. Because when teenagers are involved sexually outside of marriage, they learn that habit. Don't learn that habit. God's way. Right time, right place. Why? Because He's trustworthy and He has a plan for you. We're going to pray, and then we're going to do small groups. You girls, kind of guys, girls, guys, and we're going to rock and roll. Y'all take the time that we need. Parents, y'all are welcome to do what you need to. You can sit in with the groups, but make sure that there's adults in every group. If you need to split up into halves, do that, circles and stuff like that. Probably need another guy over here.
Craig.
Questions are at the back table right behind Mark. Harry.
Guys and adults?
And we'll need a couple guys with these adults, especially because Tyler's there. So let's pray. And I'm going to blow out my candles because I think it's time to say happy birthday. Okay? Let's pray. Let's start. Father, we thank you for your love and your grace. And Father, I just thank you for your plan for our lives. Father, you have, Father, you created it. And Father, you created it to be enjoyable. And Father, just like fire that's enjoyable in the right context, that it gives light, it gives heat. Father, outside the protection of guidance, Father, it can hurt, it can burn, it can leave scars. And Father, I pray that these students will begin to learn that inside of your guidance and your providence and trusting you, Father, there's safety and security and warmth and true love. Father, I pray that these students over these next few weeks would get a grasp of what it means to love you and, Father, to love other people. So, Father, we thank you for what you're going to do. Father, I'm just thankful for the relationship I have with my wife. Father, what work we put into it. Father, I pray that would be an example to these students as well. Father, even in the way that we're affectionate to each other. Father, it would be an example to these students about what it means to love each other and to love you first. It's in Christ's name we pray. All right, circles, small groups.